Hello everyone, welcome to the Pushing Hudson podcast. This is the host Ash. Each week, the story keeps getting better and better. Every single one reminds me why I started this podcast in the first place. Because behind every beep and a finish line, there is a human story that hits deeper than any medal ever could. This week's guest is another perfect example. His ultra journey started almost by an accident. He was supposed to write an article about it. That's really it. Just a one time thing. But what began as a simple assignment turned into a full blown obsession. A life built around endurance, grit, and adventure. From running his first half marathon at 36 to tackling 200-mile races across the UK, setting FKTs, and finishing top 10 at UTMB, one of the hardest races on the earth. He's proven that it's never too late to find what you are meant for. He has shown that the difference between ordinary and extraordinary isn't talent, it's consistency, curiosity, and the courage to keep showing up when everything hurts. This is a story about finding purpose in the miles and how a single decision can change the entire course of your life. In that note, please let me introduce to our guest today. Here is Damian. Hey, Damien, it's such a wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Lovely to chat.
I'm eager to know, like, why you got into ultra running and why and how are you doing all of these incredible endurance events that you have been doing. Before that, can you please give a quick introduction about who is Damien?
I'm a father of two. I'm 49. I live in Britain. And I guess for a job, I'm running a running coach.
Okay, thank you for that. Your entrance to the ultra running world came little bit later than usually than most of the other ultra runners out there. So, what made you decide that okay, I want to get into sports, and then you started competing at the top level? So right away.
It's one of those things where it feels like a bit of a sort of sliding doors moment, like a bit of luck. But when you look back, I think I was always heading that way. I did love running. Well, I was reasonably good at running at school, but I wanted to play football. I thought it was much more interesting to run with a ball at your feet. But I wasn't very good at that, but I still, that was much, I suppose, cooler or what all my friends did. So I really didn't do a race as an adult or even really train as a runner till I think I was 36. Signed up for a half marathon in Bath here, which is one of the big half marathons. Kind of just on a whim, like I was feeling a bit unfit. You see lots of posters around town. I was playing football and I was hiking and things. So I wasn't unfit, but I wasn't feeling that super healthy. And I just thought I'll give that a go, and I absolutely loved it. But I realise now it wasn't just the event. I loved the training and the sort of sense of mission and building up to it. And I guess standing on the start line and not knowing what it's going to feel like and not knowing if you can do it, not knowing if you can complete it. Um, so I did that and loved it. The next year I did it again, but I'd already signed up for my first marathon, and I did that. And it was actually I was a journalist, and it was actually a magazine. I was sort of pestering them to say, let me write about running. Running's this amazing new thing I've discovered. Forgetting everyone else. We've all been running all our lives in a way, and obviously everyone else is running already. But they called my bluff and sent me on an ultra marathon. So I'd only done, I think, two half marathons and a marathon, and they said, "Yeah, we'll give you a bit of work. Why don't you go and do this race in 2 months?" And I sort of had to, like, they called my bluff, and I wanted to work for this magazine. But looking back, I think realistically I was heading that way. I might just not have got there quite so quickly. So I still didn't know anyone else who'd done an ultra marathon, but I guess I was reading about it in magazines. I certainly remember seeing pictures of, Marathon des Sables. I was getting more and more curious about it. I'd heard about triathlons. I heard about fell running, which is a little bit different over here. I was definitely aware that people sort of ran up and down hills and ran longer, and I was very intrigued. But I went and did this ultra marathon, and just much more than the marathon, I thought, of course it was uncomfortable. Of course I got tired. Of course, there were bits where I regretted being there and so on. But at the finish line, I remember thinking, this is for me. I'm doing more of these. This is great. And yeah, I got really carried away from there. And the next year, I was doing my first 100K, my first 100 miler. The next January, so my fifth race, I was doing the Spine race. I don't know if your audience knows that one, but it's 268 miles up the sort of centre of England on some sort of some hills. They're not mountains, but the backbone of England up some hills along the Pennine Way. But in winter, which here isn't super cold, but it's dark and wet. And I was doing that, and I just was just loving it. Of course, yeah. Again, of course, it was uncomfortable. Of course, I made mistakes. Of course, there were moments of tears and howling howling into the void. But I did just love it. I loved the sense of adventure. And I just thought this is for me, and I just carried on and carried on. I guess really, yeah, and I'm still in love with it now. I guess that's sort of about 12 years ago, and I suppose I did start to be competitive. Yeah, I don't know if you can just see behind me. That's my one GB vest. I got selected for the GB team. 4 years after that. At the age, I think at the age of 40, yeah. So yeah, I really got, and I guess I'm just about still competitive now. I'm 49. I just love it. I just love it.
Did you say the Thames race, the 260 miles?
It's called the
Or what was the
Spine
race?
Race.
Okay, yeah, I have not heard of that, but I did talk with somebody who did the Thames ring. It is also like a 260-mile race.
Ah, that one. Yeah, that one's very flat. That's not for me. I
Yeah,
prefer some bogs and some hills and some darkness and a bit of winter misery, ideally.
that sums up the ultra marathoner mindset. If there's none of that, then it's not fun. And you said you started with half marathon and then full, then you just got in by chance, like for the journalism gig. Okay, let me see how I can do this ultra marathon. So, how was your first experience when you finished that line? You said you loved it, and was you just all in at that moment? Like, okay, I don't care. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it kind of was like that. It's funny looking back. I loved hiking. I loved trekking, like multi-day treks. I've done the sort of Inca Trail and the Everest Base Camp trek, and a lot of treks in Australia and New Zealand and such like. I do love multi-day, being out in the hills, having an adventure. And really, it's kind of the same. Like I just realised if you travel, if you pack a little bit less kit and you go a bit faster, you go, but you get there a bit quicker and you go a bit further. Really, it's kind of the same. It's not that different. And now I look back. But I also look back at, I can remember seeing sort of, I did live in Australia for a while, and I remember being a bit jealous of like the surfers out there because they seem to have this kind of discipline to get out there every day and practice and practice. And when I tried it, it's so hard surfing, but it's being outdoors in nature and it's getting out, most days. It's mastering skill. And I can look back now, and I remember feeling a bit jealous and feeling like I didn't really have something like that. I guess I was into the trekking, a little bit of mountaineering, but it didn't feel quite the same. And when I discovered running, I guess the idea that you get out every day and try and improve every day, I really liked that. And yeah, yeah, but I think the marathon, I love the athleticism of it. I loved sort of the training and then pushing yourself a bit harder. Getting into an area of, I suppose you'd say, discomfort, but just some new sensations you're not used to. I enjoy that feeling of I suppose almost curiosity of not knowing what you're experiencing. Is this terrible? Is this okay? And I had that for the marathon, but when I did the ultra marathon, it was up and down hills. It was scenically much nicer. The atmosphere was much nicer. Like there's hardly any crowd, but like you're just chatting to the other runners a lot, and there was a sense of community more so than say the road race. And I just thought, yeah, and there was something magical about the distance, just the curiosity of. So that first one was it was 69 miles over 2 days. So nowadays, that doesn't seem that daunting to me, but at the time, that was like, wow, how will I feel? How uncomfortable will it be? But it was just kindled in me a real curiosity about how far can you go, really. And the truth is, you can go almost almost forever if you don't get injured and you do sleep and do eat occasionally. You can keep going for days and days, and that's kind of fascinating.
At what point did you realize that I'm just not here to have fun, just to this much, just to like few races here and there? Because your transition came from just finishing races to becoming or competing at the top level. So when did that transition happen for you?
I think whenever I've played sport, I've been, wanted to be competitive. The irony is in football, I was often substitute for the school team. I wasn't terrible, but I wasn't that good at all. But I kept going and kept going. And even in that first ultra marathon, on the second day, I think I learned that I can't quite remember now. I don't think I was top 20, but I think I learned I was, the top quarter of the field or the top third of the field. And that did please me. And I remember pushing, trying to catch the next guy. Towards the end, I gave up and all of that because it got, too uncomfortable for me. And in fact, well, so even in that first one, I suppose I wanted to be competitive, but I hadn't trained to be competitive. Like I didn't really know how to train. And then, yeah, my second race, the 100K, I guess I between those two races, I'd probably put 6 or 8 months of training in. So that 100K, I was in the top 10, and I was pushing. I wanted to do as well as I possibly could, and I suppose at the time I did judge myself against other runners, although I increasingly try not to do that now. But yeah, I was top. I was in the top 10, and then when I did my first 100 miler later that year, I was in the top three. Now it was a new race, and it wasn't that competitive, and it was the area I grew up in, the Cotswolds, which helped. But I guess I was just curious. I was just curious at how good I could be. I suppose wanting to get my best performance, but getting being in relatively the top percentages helped me think. Oh well, there's something about this that suits me. There's something about this I like. So I guess almost from the beginning I was competitive, or at least competitive minded. And yeah, my kids will say when there are certain games, board games, when I play with them, there's some Titanic sort of fellow and Connect Four battles happening in our house. I probably don't let them win as often as most kind parents should. So I am a bit one of those annoying people who likes to win some of the time, but I'm not very good at most things, you see. So I remember when I was a teenager, like my three best friends, they're all quite into computer games, video games, and they would just kick my butt all the time. I was no good, and I didn't have any real desire to get good at that. So I'm not. Yeah, I'm one of those people that I'm bad at most things, but when I find something I'm good at, I can go sort of all in.
At what point did you realize that you wanted to do this for a living? Because at the beginning, you did it for a job, and then you transitioned to ultra running. But then you transition took another step, and then now you are very famous, and then you are competing at a different level, elite level. And when did that all of it happen?
Well, I must say it's never. Yeah, this is never. Although I've had a little bit of funding help at times, it's never been. Yeah, I've never been a full time athlete. I've always been either a journalist or a coach, and that's been pretty much a full time job. And in England, yeah, in Britain, it's very hard to. I think there's probably only one, as far as I know, sort of full time professional ultra runner. In America, it's probably a bit different. But let me think. So I suppose, yeah, I went back to the spine race, and I was third on my second go. But it was probably when That's a good question. I guess when I in 10 years ago, 2015, I suppose it was probably when I earned my GB vest behind me. There was a trial race, a 50-mile race called the Highland Fling in April, and yeah, most of the best British runners were there because if you got in the top three, you probably were selected for Great Britain. So obviously that brought the faster runners along, and yeah, most people wouldn't have. I didn't have much pedigree at that distance, or really that much pedigree in the UK, but I had an amazing race in terms of just judging the pacing right, and I ended up second, and that got me selection for the GB team. And I remember then I did open a Strava account and an Instagram account within the next couple of weeks because I thought, oh, okay, well something's happening here. And admittedly, I had a record attempt coming up as well a few weeks later on the Southwest Coast Path, and I was going back to UTMB where I guess I'd had a promising debut. Like I was top 30 at my first UTMB. Like I wasn't troubling the top 10 as I eventually would, but I was top 30, I suppose. And that got me on my first podcast. So I guess around then, around 10 years ago, and then was that the same year? I think the year before. I'm getting my years a tiny bit mixed up about whether they're 2015 or 2016. But around then, I did the Dragon's Back race as well. I'm not sure if your audience would be aware of that one, but the two biggest, toughest races in Britain are the Spine race and the Dragon's Back race. And I was in the. I'd not got anywhere close to winning either, but I was third in both of them. So I guess I was beginning to think, okay, well, something about this suits me, and like wasn't really sure, but I was already 39, 40. But I suppose I just had this like second wind of I've discovered this thing late in life. Who knows how many years I've got of being competitive. So I've just thrown myself in. I loved the training. I would have ran, sort of every single day if that was wise, and kind of still have that attitude. But yeah, I just loved it and threw myself in and just was curious about how good I could be. And so I think that being discovering it a bit later in life actually helped me. I think I coach some athletes now who are really promising, but they might be say in their 20s or early 30s, and they kind of think, well, I've got 10 or 15 or 20 years of being good at this, and they're more. There's nothing wrong with this approach, but they're much more patient about, well, I'll do that race than that race. And I jumped right in. I jumped straight into the spine. I jumped straight into the dragon's back, straight into UTMB. Not, was it impatience? I don't know if. Well, I think it was like a healthy impatience. Let's just throw myself into this and see, see what happens. I think.
Yeah, UTMB is one of the toughest ultrarunning events, right? So it's pretty popular, and you have done it. You finished top five at it, and you said you finished in the top 30 as well. So, what has been the major difference for you when you finished the top five and finished just at the top 30?
That's a good question. So I did UTMB like 4 years in a row, and I think I was 29th, 19th, 12th, and then 5th. So you can see a fairly clear progression. I think really it was probably another good year of good training. Another good year of good training. I think most likely, and I have had coaches along the way, and I've probably learned something from all of them. Um, I think that was it really. People talk about consistency, and rightly so. And I've been very lucky to not really had any significant breaks. I haven't been out for 2 months or more. I've been out for a few weeks here and there. 7 weeks is probably my longest. So I've had that consistency, and then I suppose I would sometimes, I was self-employed as a journalist. I could manipulate my hours a bit to, get somewhere a bit more lumpy, a bit more mountainous to do my training in even albeit in Britain where the our mountains aren't anywhere near as big as the Alps. But I guess I really was quite obsessed with UTMB, and I guess at the time I would have done almost anything I could. Like I missed. It was my cousin's wedding was the same day as UTMB one year, and I'm a bit. I don't know if I'm embarrassed of this or not, but I said I can't go. I've got UTMB. It's the one date of the whole year. I can't do it, and I think she's forgiven me. But looking back, I'm a little bit embarrassed I did that. But that was how obsessed with it I was. And obsession can easily backfire, right? But I think I prioritized it every year and tried to do races that would complement it and had coaches and I was really careful with, I suppose. I mean, I haven't drunk for over a year now, but I wouldn't, I'd hardly drink alcohol. I would, try and eat the right food, do the strength training. I guess I was trying to be a professional athlete because the people I was racing were usually younger than me, faster than me, often didn't have children, often, lived in mountainous areas, went out there. So I guess I felt I had to use every advantage I could find. I think, but above all, it's probably training. It's probably just another year, another year, another year. I would have thought.
When you compete in UTMB, right, you're just not competing against regular people, or let's say, because you are. That's one of the races where everybody, all the top athletes from around the world, comes and compete. So, what was your mental game like for the whole UTMB? How did you approach it?
I did have a sort of underdog sort of attitude in terms of like I did think, well, these guys are faster than me. They do 100-mile a week in mountains. They're professional athletes, and I'm none of those things. But I would sort of think, well, what if I can just be really sensible, pace it well. Fueling is so critical in a race. If I can keep fueling well, maybe they'll make mistakes and maybe I'll be sensible and come through later on, which is usually what would happen. So, and also I suppose I never expected to win or even be in the top three, really. My goal really was, could I get in the top 10? So that year before, I was in 10th place with maybe a couple of hours to go. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm in the top 10. And it's the top 10 that go up on the stage afterwards and get trophies. And I remember from my first year looking up at them like they were gods, and I was suddenly in 10th place thinking, oh my goodness, I've got a chance of being one of them. But I didn't. yeah, I wasn't fueling well enough, and basically two people caught me up and overtook me towards the end, and that was kind of a little bit heartbreaking. So I used that frustration, but also that knowledge that I was probably capable of top 10, that next year. So I think I had, yeah, a sort of simmering determination and an underdog spirit. I wasn't expecting to win. I just wanted to get top 10, but I suppose, um, there were a few more. Well, yeah, there were a few more DNFs that year, thankfully. Interestingly, I mean, my times weren't actually massively different between fifth and 12th, and ITRA actually rank my 12th place run as better. Um, but and it's difficult to compare because there's a slight course change and things. But arguably, the fifth place run wasn't all that much better, or wasn't 7 places better necessarily than which is a bit of a lesson in that you can't control other people. You can only concentrate on your performance. Um, but yeah, I think I had this underdog spirit. Wasn't trying to win, was just trying to be top 10. And I just always thought, if I can be sensible early on, because it's such an exciting race, and especially early on, the hype, so many fast runners just bomb off. But if you're just being sensible, then after a few hours, you just start moving through the field, and especially in the night, there are people ahead of you who have misjudged it, you try and take some pride in being the snail, I guess, being the fastest snail if you can. So it's a tortoise, being the fastest tortoise. So it's exciting when you can do that.
Now, as you are here, right? So with so much experience and so much of race that you have done, if you look back at your histories of all the races that you have done, have you ever felt that you left something in the course?
Oh, every time, yeah, yeah. I think absolutely every race. Even I mean, yeah, and the longer they get, and I've fallen into the habit of doing, say, the spine race. I've started that 5 times, as I say, 268 miles, and the Tour de Gion, which is 200 miles up and down Italian Alps. So races that take sort of 3 or 4 days, and the longer they are, the more sort of lulls and ups and downs, sort of emotional and energy and motivational ups and downs you get. So it's almost I think it's inevitable. You look back and go, oh, but I was, sleepy or just a bit lazy for a couple of hours there, or did I really need to stop that long there? So yeah, I think if you're looking back a little bit harshly or a little bit with a perfectionist sort of, yeah, always there's something you could have done a bit better. You could have been a bit more efficient, a bit more motivated. And even this year, I've had, yeah, my two A races have gone really, really well. But I can definitely see how they could have been a bit better. And I guess the danger is you're never satisfied. I think, yeah, I think over a bit of time you look back and think, well, I suppose I got the trophy, or I got close to as good a run as I could have. Yeah, it's important. I think it's important to let go of that perfectionist sort of mindset, and just be happy you hadn't ventured and something close to your best run.
In your history, right? So you did all of these awesome races, and then you took a detour, and then you started doing these FKTs on iconic UK route, right? So what has been the difference in your mindset when you're racing these UTMB and all of these 200-mile races and just chasing these FKTs on a solo runs?
Yeah, I mean, 2020 was a big year for that here, and that was a lot to do with the sort of, yeah, the global pandemic and lockdown, and basically all our races, most of the races around the world were cancelled. Um, so in Britain especially, once we were allowed out on the hills again, a lot of my friends and frenemies were out trying to set records everywhere. It was so exciting. And we were often helping each other on the hill, and toing and throwing, and the record would go down, and then the same record would go down a week or two later. It was really exciting. I mean, I must admit, I'd already started off that year with my own little record or FKT on the Paddy Buckley round in winter in North Wales. So I was already sort of in the zone for that sort of stuff. I mean, the big difference is there aren't other runners out there racing with you. So in theory, you should be able to pace it better. It is more of a time trial. That said, depending on your arrangement, whether you're supported or not, or whether you've got people waiting for you somewhere, in the middle of the night when you're on your own and you're feeling a bit self-pitying, you might not be as motivated because there's not an aid station just up the road, and there's not another runner just ahead of you or just behind you to keep you company. So sometimes you have to be, and there can be a bit more focus on you because, if you're running in a race, there are lots of people to keep an eye on. If you're running a record attempt and that's been sort of publicised, it's just you. So there, in some ways, there can be some extra pressure. But I think at the time, I was telling myself I preferred, FKT or record attempts. You can tailor them totally to your, you choose what they are, when, what style to go in. You get to choose all of it. Whereas a race is, it's here, it's this distance, it's this time. Like it or or lump it. Um, so for about a year, I was like, FKTs are my thing now. This is what I'm doing. But I think when races came back, I was like, actually, races, races are great fun, and I think that sense of community was a bit bigger as well. You kind of community around these record attempts, but it was actually really nice to get back to running with, I suppose rivals and friends and new friends and just more people being around. So actually, there was a year or two where I haven't done. I've almost forgotten to do any of those. I think my perfect year would be, maybe two or three big races and one sort of record attempt. Yeah, it's a brilliant sport, isn't it? Because you really can, pick your thing. Some people like to run in deserts or on the road or around a track or up and down the hills, and you can pick your distance, you can pick the terrain. So that's a wonderful element of the sport. And the downside of that is the sport is terrible for spectators. It's not easy to come and watch. It's not like a football match. That's the downside. But yeah, the upside is good.
Definitely, it's not as exciting as football match. I am a Manchester United fan supporter, so
Ah,
I know all of that.
unlucky yesterday.
Oh yeah, it should have won. Should have won that game.
Yeah, you were better. Yep.
Yeah, tough luck. I'm still processing it. Still processing it.
You guys were good. I was impressed.
Yeah, me too. I didn't thought Cunha was gonna be so good, and the way he dribbled, I was like closer to my seat. I was like, oh my god, what the hell is happening? We have now player who can dribble and then dribble against the half of the team. It was like, oh shit, it's gonna get real this season. So I'm excited.
He looks exciting, certainly.
Are you Arsenal fan or
Yes, yes, yes.
okay? My brother is too.
Oh, great. Well, hopefully great. Yes, we'll see. We'll see.
Now going back to these FKTs, right? You said you have been chasing this and trying to do this one race a year and trying to set records. So if you go back and look at all the FKTs you have done, has there been anyone that just broke you completely? And the ones where you felt like the deepest satisfaction, like, oh my God, this was so brilliant.
I think actually my first one was actually, oh, well, sorry, technically it was my second one, but yeah, when I ran the Southwest Coast Path, which I think was 2015, so 10 years ago, yeah, 630 miles. It was basically sort of 10 and a half days. Yeah, and I was quite new to that stuff. I had done two spine races, but this was, three times as long. Yeah, I was pretty broken on that one. That was the break. It was quite a complicated story because I started off with a friend, and it was him who he arranged most of it and was paying for most of it, and he had done it before, and really he wanted to get the record back, and I was almost like an insurance policy of if it didn't go well for him, I was there at least. And yeah, he had a knee problem, but he's very stubborn, so he carried on. He carried on. There were probably 2 days where I couldn't say to him, look, you need to stop because it was his thing, but we were getting slower and slower and we were getting behind the record. And he did it a few times say, right, that's it, I'm quitting. And I would say, look, come on, give it a bit longer. But it was really awkward in a way. Finally, he decided there was no point in going on. So I pushed on. But by then we're, behind the record. So from then on, I slept on average 3 hours a night to try and make sure, to try and get ahead of the record and make sure we beat it. And that's not good for you. So there's some mornings, and also my biggest mistake was probably I didn't have a good enough sleeping mat. We were in a van, but it was like a metal floor. The sleeping mat wasn't brilliant, so I'd get 3 hours sleep, but it wasn't good sleep either. I remember waking up and turning over, and just feeling the metal of the floor, on my back, and I think I'd wake up about 4 o'clock in the morning, ready to go again to use the light, and there was a couple of mornings. Honestly, I just felt dead, like or death would have been a nicer option, and yeah, it just felt horrible. But I suppose when you really believe in what you're doing, and you just get going and you warm up and things improve, I suppose. And it wasn't worth it in the end. Um, we did break the record, and I would feel better through the day. So, but that was, I still think that was the hardest in terms of just getting up and really not wanting to get up, really not wanting to. Um, and then probably the one I'm proudest of, and I was thinking when I kind of said, you're never totally satisfied with a run. The one I came closest to feeling satisfied with was in the summer of 2020 when I went for the Pennine Way record. And the Pennine Way is actually the same route as the Spine Race. It's our oldest national trail, 60 years old now, and it goes right down the centre of England, well, the border of Scotland down to sort of the middle of England. Um, and yeah, the record was stood for 30, I think it was 31 years. But my friend, the American John Kelly, who was living over here, we both knew we were both going for it, but he ended up going before me, 8 days before me, and he broke the record that stood for 31 years, but only by about 20 minutes. I think he had terrible tummy problems, and so I went for it and beat his time by 3 hours. And that run felt amazing. Well, yeah, of course it was really tough at times and uncomfortable, but that felt like wow. I sort of left everything out there, I think. Um, that felt very special. I should. For those who don't know, it's only right that I say that John went back the next year and knocked another 3 hours off my time, and then I tried to go again and yeah, didn't. I didn't get to the end. I just I was too far behind his time. So that probably was my best run on that route anyway. So yeah, those are the two that stand out for me.
And we were talking about this mindset, right? So, and I am talking to a few people who do these enormous races like 600 miles, and you did around the similar kind of thing, the cocodonas, the multi-day events and FKTs, and they all have this different tips and tricks to deal when you are in this low period. And do you have any sort of this tip and tricks that you use when you are in this low period, like you were just mentioning, where you couldn't sleep at night and you just wanted to quit, and then like how did your mindset change, or what did you do to keep yourself moving in those low moments?
I mean, there's a few reminders or mantras. I guess you just learn over time that although everything's going this way, it nearly always comes back up. And in fact, I really like the phrase, which I think comes from maybe David Horton in America, which is "it never always gets worse." So nearly always it is a journey kind of like this. I mean, maybe it's getting gradually downhill, but it's up and down, up and down, up and down. So just because you're down, nearly always you can come back up, and nearly always that is to do with fueling or maybe sleep if it's a really long one. Almost a preliminary mantra would be low mood, eat food. So if you start to get negative, just have a sweet, have a snack, and often that sorts things out for a little bit. But then it never always gets worse, and yeah, the more you do this, the more you get into I suppose you get into a scenario where just everything feels awful and rubbish, and you want to give up. But if you continue for a bit, nearly always it improves. It always improves with sunrise. Nearly always it improves, and I've never regretted carrying on and finishing. Like that's always been worth it, and that finish line feel is really special and a real high and quite addictive. So yeah, I'm armed with those things, and now with my age, I suppose having done it for 12 years, I guess the lows don't feel as low because you're kind of like you've got some in the bank from my first spine race, for example. Um, you kind of think, well, it's not as bad as that time, is it? So it can't be too bad as well. So yeah, I think now I know those things. It's usually the lows, the catastrophes aren't really catastrophes.
And over the course of a decade, right, we have been doing this multiple FKTs, multiple 200-mile races, 600 races, like we have done everything. And how do you balance everything in this time? Because you said you have a couple of A races in a year, and then you try to attempt these FKTs and try to break the course record and stuff like that. So how do you balance your mileages, recovery, without burning out?
I think those first few years, I was so excited by the sport, and there were so many different races and so many different types of terrains and distances. Yeah, I probably did race a bit too much early on, and I get little injuries, nothing significant, but I would try and do a race a week or two after a 100-mile race I've done that twice, and both times, yeah, got an injury. So you are like, okay, that's something of a pattern. And then you speak to other people, and also if you've got a coach, you realise that's you're not recovered. You shouldn't have done the other race. And I think, yeah, the more serious I got about it, being selected for the GB team, doing well at UTMB, I just realised you've got to race less. And I think my coach at the time, Ian Sharman, he sort of said, well, I think 3A races in a year is enough, especially if one, two, three of them are 100 milers or things where you're out for 24 hours or more. And for me, it's often more. So yeah, generally, I can't promise every year, but occasionally it's 4, but they might be really spread out. January to December. But yeah, I try and think of maybe 3A races, and ideally, in an ideal world, yeah, full 3 months in between them. And I just noticed, I suppose, the less I raced, the better I raced. Um, and also, I do love the training. I think at the beginning I trained to race, and nowadays I race to train. Like I love putting the race in the calendar, but then thinking, oh look, this will be my main training block. The month before, that's the big weekends. I start booking them in. Where will I go? Which friends shall I drag along or try and keep up with if it's Jack Scott? And I'm just excited, if not more excited, about the training. And also, yeah, increasingly I've got friends and athletes who'll say the same. Like they'll stop in a race because they don't want to get injured because they don't want to miss training. Which I mean, if you do that all the time, maybe you're signing up for the wrong races. But I totally get that. Like for a lot of us, the the joy is in the doing, and that's healthier than being obsessed with the race and the outcome of the race. So I think that's part of it. I think it's learning to love the process. Especially, I mean, for me, I'm not going to get any faster, but it is trying to maintain my speed. But it's the long runs, it's the big days out. I think in the hills, sometimes with friends, eating lots of snacks as well. Yeah, I think it's the love of the sport, the love of training, and realizing I'll be better if I race less as well. I mean, sometimes there are some B races in there, but usually, ideally, like 50Ks, I suppose. Not too much of a stress. That might mean the next week isn't great or isn't much running, but only 1 week, and then you can get back to it. Um, so I think that's the secret. But then I do also touch wood. I've not had a significant injury for over 5 years, and I do the strength work. I try to get the sleep in. I eat enough. I am vegan, but I don't know that really makes a difference. But I do heat training. Haven't drunk alcohol for well over a year. Like I visit a physio regularly, preemptively. So I do a lot of things around the actual running to try and not get injured and keep that consistency as well. I think for me, yeah, I mean something's keeping me from getting injured. I don't totally know what it is, but it means I can't stop doing any of those things in case it's one of them. It might not be any of those things, and I'll be quite annoyed if I find that out.
That might be because you are very analytical at your approach and you do a lot of things based on stats and analytics. So, has your training evolved as you started your journey and how you are at this moment in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I did have I sort of almost by accident. I did have a coach early on. I just sort of met a coach, and I didn't really know how to train for ultras. And I guess, yeah, some of his advice actually wasn't that good, but he did get me to run more. I suppose I didn't know how many days a week should you run to, but should every other day or twice a day, or I didn't really know. So I guess he got me running more, 5 or 6 times a week. Um, and then yeah, I worked with other coaches who I guess would bring in proper speed work, and then I suppose the idea of getting close to a race, getting more specific with your runs. Certainly that first UTMB, like I'd done the Dragon's Back race, but I'd hardly got to mountains otherwise, and that was quite a shock to the system. And even the Dragon's Back race, British sort of Welsh mountains are very different to the Alps. They're actually kind of more rugged, actually, but smaller. So you don't have those massive long descents that you have in the Alps that are very very runnable. And I'd never experienced those before. So yeah, more specific training, and I guess bringing in things like strength work, foam rolling, um, and then, yeah, I had 2 years. Actually, my best year at UTMB, I was self-coached, but I ran around that time. Yeah, I was really pushing the volume, so I was doing 100 miles a week. Not all the time, but I did that a few times. But then the next year, what was interesting to me at least was I carried on, just big volume, and I was kind of plateauing or maybe regressing, because after a while, running 100 miles a week, with 20-mile long run every week in the mountains, after a while that was counterproductive for me, and I was sort of not doing the speed work either. So I got David Roach is my coach now and has been for about 5 years, and he reduced my volume and made sure I do the quality speed work, often only once a week, but lots of strides as well. And if I'm totally honest, as I've got to the end of my 40s, there is a bit less volume again, which at first I was sort of fighting back against, but I'm injury free, and this year anyway, I've sort of got the results I was hoping for. And there's a little bit more cross training now, although I don't love it. But I do see the real value of strength work now. So in fact, I need to do a little bit after our chat to stay on top of things. But yeah, that's broadly speaking my training journey. It's all on Strava, but I run about sort of 65, 70 miles a week on average now. Maybe there'll be 2 or 3 weeks a bit bigger, but most of the time around that seems pretty sustainable to me. For me,
if you look at your whole career, right, and has there been a low point in your career that you have taken to you and use it to get yourself better, or just to hold it, to treasure it?
yeah, there was a spell around sort of 2021, 2022. After 2020, everything I touched seemed to turn to gold. I did 3 record attempts and they're all successful. And I just I didn't think I was invincible and amazing, but I was like, yeah, everything's going well. This is great. And you sort of forget how tough this sport is. And you're trying to, especially with record attempts, you're trying to do something no one's done before. So there's a pretty good chance actually that it won't work. So that next year, it was when I tried the Pennine Way again, and it was clear I wasn't, that time anyway, wasn't going to get close to his record. And I had my first, or maybe that was 2022 actually, but my first DNF in 2021, 9 years into the sport, which was, my 5th UTMB. First DNF, a record attempt didn't go well. What else happened? I think a record attempt was successful, but I overhydrated, which can be hyponatremia, which can be fatal. So, and that was a bit embarrassing. So I had a spell where things just didn't seem to go as they used to, And at first I guess I questioned my training and my coach a little bit. And I questioned, I guess, was it age, But I think Tour de Gion as well. My first Tour de Gion was going quite well, and I'm a bit embarrassed about this, but I went off course quite badly, partly because I was with someone who was local and said, "Oh no, it's this way," and I was like, so we're incredibly tired. We've been running for 3 days, and I'm like, I can't see any course markers, and both our watches had failed as well at that time, and I was like, I can't see any. Are you sure? And he was like, yeah, definitely up here, definitely. Like, so he was local, and he was so confident that I was just very tired and sort of thought, yeah. I mean, maybe it is, and I just didn't ask. I didn't trust myself enough. Actually, my instinct was this didn't feel right. But he led us wildly off course. It cost me. I think hopefully I was going to be about 6th and ended up not in the top 10. We did 2 or 3 hours extra, so that was quite painful. But I guess I did still finish the race, and I guess I was quite proud of that because there was still quite a long way to go, and I don't think there's a reasonable excuse for sitting down and not going any further. So I think in about an 18-month spell, there were these four things that didn't go very well at all, and I guess you start questioning everything really. But I didn't really change much. I think I just sort of thought, no, this stuff is hard, and I guess keep plugging away. And then the next year, things did really seem to turn back my way, and I think I was trying to do hard things, and I went back to the tour and did much better. And what else did I do? Well, anyway, things went my way again. So I don't think it was. I think it was just the vagaries of the sport. It's difficult. There are lots of variables. Lots of things can derail you. You've got to embrace. You've got to embrace the failures too. I think there's no. What's the point if you're going to be frightened of failing? And believe me, if you look at my exam results from school, I wasn't frightened of failing. If you're frightened of, if you're not going well, there's almost no point in starting because it's difficult. And also, it doesn't matter that much. Like, all right, I suppose I did have sponsors, and that puts a bit more pressure and a bit more coverage on it. But I don't think people really care that much, And I mean, I remember, a very good athlete and friend she honestly didn't know whether me or John Kelly still had the Penn weight record. And to me, it's like, oh, he thrashed me, he beat me by 3 hours. To me, it's like printed on my forehead, loser, not as good as John Kelly. And she didn't really care. Like she knows loads about the sport and couldn't remember which of us had the record. So it doesn't matter to other people as much as we think it does sometimes. Yeah, and also I never lost my love of it, I suppose, and I just still wanted to try and do big things, even if they weren't going to go my way all the time. And if things are going your way all the time, I'm not criticizing anyone else, but maybe you're not challenging yourself enough, and you know, I mean, John Kelly is a brilliant example of this. For those who followed his Appalachian Trail attempt, it didn't go well, but in the past, I think every time his record attempt hasn't gone well, he's gone back and nailed it. But he doesn't seem to beat himself up too much when things don't go well. And really, we're lucky. We're lucky to do this. And suffering is a privilege. And if we're healthy and wealthy enough to try these things, and yeah, you don't want to lose that perspective. I don't think either.
If you look at yourself, right? So you have done UTMBs and you have finished in top 10, top 5. You have done FKTs and set up so many courses record. You have written books. But if we strip all of that away, do you think you'd still be a runner or you would be somebody totally different?
Well, I think I was headed that way. I mean, I was really enjoying the trekking and a little bit of mountaineering, although it's expensive and risky and difficult to do mountaineering if you don't live right by mountains. But I was doing the trekking, and to me, it is the same thing. It is, I guess, long adventures in hills, really. So I suppose if, for example, I got so injured I couldn't really run anymore, I think I would be trying to hike in those hills. I think that's yeah, and I guess that's a little bit different, but not super different. So I think that's the only real difference it would be. For years I was enjoying, sometimes on my own, sometimes with other people. I guess there aren't so many events, but that's all right. Yeah, I'd be a trekker, I think.
While we were talking about all the right, so when you are doing these kind of multi-day events and all of these tough races, you have seen everything, right? You have been to the dark places, you have come out of it. So if you could bottle it off and make this one mental tool for a new runner coming up, what would that be?
Uh, that's a good question. Well, it's become a bit of a cliche, but it does come from some science, I believe, or some psychology at least. Know your why. Why are you doing this in the first place? And often for me, it's to have an adventure. I'm lucky that my life is reasonably stable and safe, and I don't have to worry about food or my safety. And yet it seems like people some people whose lives are fairly sort of predictable. There seems to be something inherent in us that we want to go and have some adventures. And I would say ultra running they're fairly safe compared to mountaineering, for example, and quite a few other sports. They sound ridiculous. They sound like, why on earth would you run 100 miles or run for 2 days? But actually hugely rewarding. And they're these little fairly safe adventures, and often the adventures in your head. It's an emotional adventure almost. I've got quite far from the question, I think, but I think I would go back to, know your why. And for me, it is, to have an adventure, for a bit of self exploration, for a bit of, we're all trying to discover ourselves, right? And I'm getting a bit cliche, but yeah, you do come away knowing yourself a bit better, and you don't always like what you find. I can't promise you come away thinking I'm heroic, I'm amazing, because quite often we're not. I think that's it. I think that's know your why. So before a big challenge, maybe even write it down. Like, why are you doing this? And usually, if it's something good and personal to you, then that's going to help you. And it's always felt worth finishing to me. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be awful. Of course, it gets uncomfortable. You get tired. There might be some sensations. That aren't that comfortable. But it's great.
It is great. We all love suffering. And let's say, for example, right? So the day comes and you had one final attempt to do these FKTs, this one, and this will be your last FKT run or the last run. Where would you go and why?
Oh, that's good. I mean, I mean, I think I can say this one because I almost definitely never will try it, but I probably would have loved in a different world a go at the Appalachian Trail in America. It's 2,000 miles long, and really that is the top one. But also, I just love the sense of a long, long journey like that, exploring a lot of America. However, the record's around 5 to 6 weeks, and to me, that's just too long to be away from my kids. So unless there's some way they could be involved, which I think is unlikely, I don't think I'll have a go at that. But I think that's the ultimate one. It just sounds like such an adventure. Um, I'll say that one. I'll say that one.
If we look at you, right? So you have written books, you do races, you coach, and you also campaign and do stuff like that. So, what is left in a bucket list to do?
Oh, well, that again, I'll be honest, I can't think of that many races I'm desperate to do. I mean, I've never done hard rock or Western States in America, but they're so hard to get into. I've given up trying. There's one called the Swiss Peaks 360, which I quite fancy, perhaps. And actually, I haven't done. There are quite a few 100 milers in Britain that I haven't actually done yet. But there are loads of national trails and paths I could sort of go and run, whether it's a record or not. So there isn't. I'll be honest, there isn't one outstanding one for me at the moment. But it's great that we've got so many different options.
So, few things left. I asked this question to everybody. I don't know if you have answered this question, but why do you run?
Ah, I hate that one. I mean, the boring answer I think is that I feel good. It makes me feel good. So I think it makes me feel good, mentally and physically, usually, not always afterwards. I just feel better when I run. And I think it's a bit about freedom, it's a bit about exploration. But I just feel good. Running makes me feel good, better about myself, in almost every way I can think of.
So there is this rapid fire. I'll just ask you a bunch of random questions. So whatever things comes to your head. Trail or roads?
Trails.
Favorite race snack mid ultra?
Oh, good one. Oh, it's been a while. Some avocado sandwiches.
Stronger weapons, legs or mind?
Mind.
Who's the toughest competitor you have faced?
Jasmine Paris.
Music, podcast, or silence when you run?
Podcasts.
Hardest climb you have ever suffered on?
The meat grinder in Frozen Head State Park.
Your dream running partner, dead or alive?
Hmm. Oh, that's a good one. I've been so lucky to have run with several of my heroes. I guess let's go Lizzie Hawker.
So this is the final question I will ask to everybody. I would like you to please finish this sentence. Running has changed my life because.
It's made me happier.
Awesome, that is sweet and brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been interesting. I only saw your profile and I was looking at who I can talk to for the podcast and try to get the mindset and everything because it's been really privileged to talking to so many people and finding out and using these on my own ultra. So you have given new ideas on how to tackle the ultras ahead. So I think folks would find this very interesting conversation.
Great stuff. All right. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much and have a good evening. Yeah, bye bye. Hey everyone, thank you for making it to the end of the podcast. I hope you really enjoyed this conversation. I'll see you again next time with another guest. Until then, happy running.